What's up? Am I recording? Yes, I'm recording. Hi, hi, hi. How are we today? Sound on, everything's good. What's cooking? It's a Saturday, beautiful night, and here I am chilling, talking to you guys. So, today's video is an interview leads to a dynamic and intention. A probational period leads to intention and consistency. A job leads to consistency and value, and then basically it leads to a career. I was having this conversation with the woman I was consulting for. Like, I recently finished a project. I built a website for somebody, but I did everything from like the branding to the website to like the content creation and the whole like copywriting, just like the tonality of the website, the user experience and the user flow and the user interface. Front end, we still didn't start doing the back end, but all she wanted was front end. So we did the first primary things first, and then we're deciding how the company is going to go and how she wants her direction to improve into the future and what she would like to actually get out of it and how she would want to engage with it. So we did this as a first step, and I finished. And while I was having a conversation with her, we were discussing like the potential of like hiring people and the interviews she would want to do. And while we were discussing it, I basically started to I don't know. I think I used a point of reference to how everything kind of like connects. And so, just to get to the interview, somebody has to apply for a job. And then in the interview, if there's either dynamic or intention, then there's basically a probational period. And if there's a probation, and in the probational period, if there's intention and consistency, then there's a job. Then it becomes a job, right? It's no longer I'm on a probation because there's intention and consistency. We can trust that this person is actually going to keep moving forward. And if there's consistency and value, then the job becomes a career. Why? Because you're generating value, it becomes an output thing. If I'm not mistaken, we were having a conversation about relationships and how people kind of like meet each other and decide how they want to be with each other. Because for me, I feel like relationships are an interview. Granted, there are feelings involved, but so is hiring for work. And it's just like a relationship for me is including somebody in your life. I would love to look at somebody and be like, oh my God, I want to include you in my life. But that's very superficial. And on top of all of that, it's not that it's superficial. It's that if you are to make a decision based on the superficiality of it, then are you really looking for a relationship? Because the chances are you're just not going to basically evolve forward. But so discussing relationships in this way, then that makes more sense because now that I remember the full conversation, and I love it because when these start popping up, when you actually like start reflecting on them, when you are establishing a relationship, uh, a friendly relationship, a lover's relationship, and whatever, uh, or yeah, a career relationship, a creator's relationship, because like maybe I am right now, I'm kind of engaging with this as I'm speaking to you in terms of myself. Because when I first started this journey, and it started becoming a journey when I actually started, right? So the first thing I started doing was noticing the things that are happening with me. And naturally, the things that are happening with me that are not really stuff that I would want in my life. And ultimately, we can use that area as the basically introduction part. And I'll go like, okay, so like, what I'm working with is something that I don't like. So in a way, it's not a hire somebody kind of thing, but I have to interview the characteristics of, okay, so yourself. So I really don't want to use the metaphor of interview, but I wrote here interview. So let's just see. Uh, the best way I can say is when I started this journey, I started looking at myself. And effectively, what I started doing was I started looking at the things that are not really working. And then I started basically questioning what brought them to existence. And when I started doing that, what I reflected on was what parts of me brought them to existence. And then Through that engagement, I was able to kind of like dynamically involve myself in a relationship with that part of me. So effectively, that's basically the introduction. And then after the introduction, there's the kind of like interview process, as in like, why did you do this? Where would you go after this? Where do you think this will take us? Do you think this is a positive thing? Blah 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 blah. Because of that, you kind of prove to yourself, or at least that part of you that's contributing to the thing that you don't like, you kind of prove to yourself that you actually have some intention behind it, and you're interested in generating a certain kind of like positive working relationship and a dynamic. So naturally, because you're dealing with yourself, you 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 would say yes unless it's something you really don't like. So if it's something you really don't like, you're pressured with a choice right now. You either drop the thing that you don't like, or go work with something else that shows not to like it. Because literally, life is, I mean, like, life is change, and it's just a choice. Everything you do could be narrowed down to a choice. Because ultimately, most of our preferences are because of our childhood. Like, if I was born somewhere other than Lebanon, I'd have different preferences, but nothing would have changed. It'll still be my parents, but the environment kind of guided me a certain kind of way and got me used to certain things. So deciding which part of you also to kind of like introduce yourself to is a thing. You could just jump in the whole thing or start one at a time and slowly kind of like circulate, because you're leveling up. If you're looking at yourself as more of a startup, or if you're looking at yourself more as a dynamic growth kind of thing, you have different parts of you: emotional parts, like structured parts, logistical parts, creative parts. All these kind of like have their own influences, and you have to unite them as if you're uniting corporations, because you are one big organism that relies on different parts to be active and doing different things. So it's fun. It's fun to look at it this way, actually, very fun. Okay, but so from a dynamics perspective, you kind of like established your intention. So when you establish your intention, now you can test out this newfound relationship, because there's something that's you don't like and something that's contributing to it. You create a relationship with what's contributing to it. And this relationship basically is either, I don't know, it's going to be a give and take, but like, what are we giving and taking? You guys can set the rule. It becomes a negotiation or whatever it is. As long as we're moving in a positive direction, we can always get back to the table and talk again and renegotiate. But if we're not going in a different direction, there's no point any other negotiation. We have to establish a dynamic. And so after establishing a dynamic and an intention, you enter a period where you're kind of testing things out. And as you test things out, that's the back and forth that I'm talking about. It allows you to start consistently building on top of what you have established to be an okay thing between you guys or not. So that gives consistency on top of the intention that you've established before. So there's a dynamic because you guys want to work together. And then you established an intention. And then after that, you established on top of the intention the consistency. And that leads to a full-time operational thing happening as a part of you. And naturally, like, when are you really productive when it comes to work? Like, there's a lot of research that the people that are hired between 6 months to a year, they're not really productive. But as long as they're not costing the company extra money, they stay, because by the time they get comfortable in the actual company, what happens is they kind of like explode into their own kind of thing. They're confident in their decisions if they're nurtured properly. So at that time, it's a perfect environment for you to kind of like allow the part of you that has been kind of like, that's the relationship that's been established with that part of you, to kind of roam and do its thing. Because the last thing you want to do is put a lot of pressure on it and break it. Like, if you plant a tree, you can't expect it to bear fruit. It has to kind of like build the strength to start bearing fruit. And when you let that go, fuck, I've been doing this unconsciously for the past 2 years. Every single time I actually like find myself stuck, I jump and I start doing something else, but I've been doing it externally. So now I'm reflecting on it internally. Amazing. So basically, after building consistency on top of the intention, you kind of have a functioning operational new mechanism part of you slash relationship happening. And so this relationship, on top of it, the best you could do is build on top of the consistency value. Once you start receiving value from it, then it grows on its own, and it's very much synchronous, working synchronously with your own vision, with your own, like, there's an understanding between these two as a dynamic. And so the beauty of it becomes in how we actually, like, how it becomes a thing. It no longer is something you interfere with. It becomes something that's sovereign on its own within you. And if you're able to kind of build that kind of relationship where you can rely on the different parts of you that would contribute to something positive, then ultimately what you would have done is removed your own self from the entire equation and allowed everything else about yourself to be what's active and what's promoting your progress and what moves you into the future. Fuck me, this is beautiful. I would love to write about it, but not yet. But because of that, I'm going to circle this note. I'm going to remember how I discussed it. And yay, my people. Okay, this is a fucking video.